Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. And today I have with me J.R. Armstead Jones. J.R. is an educator and also the author of My Invisible Father. J.R., welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So let's jump in. Why don't we start at the very beginning? Tell us a little bit about your background. Like, where did you grow up? Yeah, let's start there.
Well, I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and have been here practically my entire life. I did go 1 year away for college and then came back and finished college here in St. Louis. So that's where I grew up and where I've lived. Went to high school in University City, Missouri, which is just a suburb of St. Louis. And a little bit about my background. I was heavily into sports as a young kid. Played baseball, football, and basketball like every year from the age of 7 till around 12. And then I just stuck with baseball a little bit and basketball all the way through high school and even in college. And I have a somewhat of a writer's background because I took up media communications in college. My undergrad is in media communications, and I wrote for a few newspapers here locally, and of course wrote for the campus newspaper as well. So, yeah.
Great. And your book, obviously being about fathers and that maybe not having a father around. What was life with your father like?
It's hard to say I didn't meet my father until I was 14 because that's not really true. It's just I was so young, I didn't know my father. I didn't remember meeting my father when I was born up until I was about 4 years old. And then when I turned 4, my mother got married to my stepfather. So I had no recollection of my biological father from up to that point. And so my stepfather was just my father. That was the father that I knew. It was the only father I knew. And then my biological father did come back into my life when I was a teenager, early teen, 14, 15 years old. And so we established a relationship and learned that I had 2 sisters, an older sister, a younger sister, half sister that I had never met before. So growing and knowing them in my teen years and even until adulthood was a new experience. But the relationship that I did have with my father, it was great. It was once we met, we had a common love of basketball because he played high school and college basketball as well. So, and that was part of the reason that he kind of left my mom when he did at that young age. He went away for school in Michigan State University to play basketball. And then that kind of split them apart for the most part. But then again, when I did meet him, it was, we it took obviously some adjustments, but we would go to the gym and play basketball. And that was like our ground to get to know each other better. And yeah. And, he passed away in 2018. So from the age of 15 to about age of 48, I had a pretty good, decent relationship with my biological father.
Nice. When did you start teaching?
I started teaching pretty late. I went back to school in 2005 to get my master's in education, and I received it in 2007. I was 37 years old at that time. So that was 17 years ago.
What was it that triggered that desire to go into education?
So at the age of 13, I was in 7th grade. I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be a teacher. Those were my goals. I mean, my first goal was to be in the NBA, but I'm like 5'7" on a good day. So that dream, shattered pretty quickly. So, but yeah, I my first year in college, I went to a teacher's college. And after that, I left because I decided I didn't want to teach. I wanted to be a writer. So I went to a junior college for a year in Illinois and started taking courses for journalism. But at age 13, I wanted to be a teacher, but I also wanted to be a writer. So I just meshed those things together many, many years later after going through different other careers and so forth. But yeah, just in seventh grade, I didn't think I was a great writer, but I had a teacher that inspired me, a teacher that encouraged me and spoke to me about it. And it just, her teaching me that way made me want to teach that way. And she also inspired me to want to write. And I would, at that age, 1982, 1983, the St. Louis Cardinals were usually always pretty good, but they were very good in 82 because they won the World Series. And I would watch games or listen to games. And then after the game, I would open up my notebook and write a story about the game, like a news reporter. So I just knew I wanted to write for newspapers or magazines, probably sports writing more than anything. Yeah. But I also wanted to be a teacher. So it was just those things just meshed eventually. Yeah. And now I'm teaching young writers and readers.
Yeah. I also, as a kid, wanted to be a teacher and a writer. So I totally recognize that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what grade level are you teaching?
I teach seventh grade. I've been teaching seventh grade. Well, I always get the years mixed up because they overlap with years, but I think this is my 17th year. I taught 9 years in one district, and 3 of those years I taught sixth grade. And then 6 of those years I taught seventh grade. And in my new district, this is my 8th year there, I believe. Yes. And I've taught seventh grade the entire time there.
I think that's really commendable because I've substituted in middle schools, and I know that can be a challenging age range.
It can be. Yeah. When I first went back to school, I wanted to be a high school English teacher. And so my certification was really 9 through 12. But my middle school that I went to hired me or offered me a job. And I was like, well, I guess I won't be doing high school. I'll be doing middle school. And it was so surreal because I was teaching at the middle school that I attended. So that just made it even better. And at this point, I wouldn't change it. I would not go to high school. I would stay in middle school until I no longer am teaching.
Great. That is so great. So what was it? Was it something that you were experiencing while teaching that led to writing My Invisible Father?
Yes and no. The first part of that is before I started teaching, I had a young family. Back in 2002, 2001, 2002, I was working at a church as a youth minister. And I had 3 young kids. They were, 7, 8, 5. I had 3 kids who were really close in age. And I wanted to write a book about parenting. I was a young parent. I didn't know much, but I did a lot of research and just things I've heard and saw and experienced. I wanted to write a book about parenting. Well, a few years later, I got divorced. So it just squashed all my plans of writing because it was like starting over. So starting over, I had to, make some other decisions and no longer working at the church. I'm looking for a job and I'm trying to go back into the writing, into, journalism or public relations. And I'm looking for a job. And I ended up getting a job at a juvenile center. While I was looking, I was like, well, this is what I got to go with because this is going to pay me right now. So working there really opened my eye because I was able to see so many struggling readers and then connect it on why they were there. The education and the illiteracy just really showed that when you're not able to read or you don't have much care for school and reading and books, it can lead you to other places. And I've done the research and saw how it is. It's a common theme all over our country when it comes to imprisonment for juveniles and adults as well on the reading level. So being in there and seeing 90% of them, well, the actual number, I believe it's been a while, but I think the actual number is like 87% of people who are incarcerated are illiterate. So I would see, a group out of every group of 10, there are like 2 that could read and could write and could do, mathematics, but the other 7, 8 just couldn't. So that really opened my eye. And we would go to the library once a week because they still had to go to school within the facility. And then we would go to the library and They would sit and read books, but the majority of them didn't want to. And I started seeing the ones who were reading the type of material they were reading, like realistic fiction or even memoirs about kids or memoirs about adults who had hard lives. So that kind of sparked something in me to really look at struggling readers and what could I do as a teacher. One, by at the time, during that time, I was in school while I was working there, so I knew where I was headed. But as a teacher and then as a writer, what could I do to inspire, to help, to motivate, and then to write something that kids will want to
Yeah.
read?
That's such a powerful cause, I think, that we hear it from many authors. I think even J.K. Rowling, I think, started that same way. She wanted to create stories that kids would want to read. And I know that we have other clients that have expressed that same thing, I think it's so great that there are authors like you who are out recognizing where there are challenges and stepping in to be able to create content that is going to be enticing and engaging for people that haven't found that engagement yet.
Absolutely. Being in the school for the last 2 years while my book's been out, I've had many kids who are great readers, who are academically above and achieving, who've read the book. And have enjoyed it. So it gives me pleasure to know that even though my target audience were the young people who struggle, because I wrote, the chapters are short, because I know the attention span is short for some of those kids who don't like to read. So I tried to cater it to those struggling readers. But I've had a number of readers and high achieving students who've read it, and it works for them as well.
Well, tell us a little bit about your book. And then we'll go into the audiobook aspect of it. But tell our listeners a little bit about the book itself. That'd be great.
All right. Yeah. So My Invisible Father is basically about 3 teenagers who are struggling with different ways that they're missing their fathers. What we would probably call the main characters, and I call all 3 of them main characters, but the story is really centered around one character named Jaren. He never met his father, and he's 15 years old, and growing up between the ages of 9, 10, 11, 12, he would always ask his mom about, where's my father? I see some other kids around with fathers. Where's my father? And he struggled with not knowing. And when she finally told him the truth that his father doesn't want anything to do with him, it was a major blow, as anyone probably would feel. So as he continued to grow, 13, 14, 15 years old, he sees the struggle that his mom is going through. He's a bright kid. He goes to a high achieving school, but the street life just starts drawing him because he's tired of struggling. He's tired of seeing his mom work 2 jobs. He has 2 siblings, younger siblings. And even though he knows it's not who he is, he decides to go out into the streets and start selling drugs and hoping just to make it that way. And a lot of it's a tribute to the fact that he feels like he has to be the father at 15 years old. A good friend of Jaren is Camry, who, again, is not rich at all. She lives in the same type of neighborhood, but she has a stepfather who takes care of her and the family. Her father's in prison, and she didn't understand it when she was younger, when he went to prison. But as she's grown older, she's become bitter that her father chose crime over the family. So she spits that out in almost any man that she meets, any boy that she meets. She tries to stay away from the criminals, the bad boys, as much as possible. And here, a good friend, Jaren, that they've grown up together, went to the same schools all the way through high school, has now reached out into that realm, and it really hurts her. And she's trying hard to get him to not do that. But at the same time, she meets a boy who she hears, and I don't want to give too much of that away, it has done some things before he moved to St. Louis, and she drops him like it's nothing until she realizes and finds out what the real deal is. But she's just hurting, and she's struggling. She's struggling with the crime in St. Louis, and she's kind of like a little miniature soldier with a soft voice. Like she's really about for the people, but she's still hurting.
And the book is written from 3 points of view. So tell us a little bit about that decision, and then we'll talk about the audio and how that plays out.
Yeah, so it's written in 3 points of view, perspectives. Jayron is telling his own story, and Camry's telling her story. And those two intertwine often because, again, they're friends. They go to the same school. And then the third main character, Asen, whose father has his own business. He's not an urban kid. He's a white kid in the suburbs. His father is always out of town. And he has a father in the home, but it feels like he doesn't. And he struggles with that. He feels lonely. He takes it out on kids at school, bullying and so forth. So he's telling his story as well. And eventually, those 3 stories come together in a mysterious way, a twist that no one saw.
We don't want to give away. No spoilers here.
Yeah. Spoiler. But I decided to do that because with my first draft that I wrote it in first person, and I only had Jayron in the story. And which meant that even though, and there was no Asen in that story, there was no Camry in that story. So since it was just Jayron, I had a lot of adult voices. And my editor says, this is really not going to appeal to the young adult, to the teenage reader, to that audience. So I pondered and pondered for weeks and weeks how to rewrite the story. And it just came to me. I mean, at that time, I've read few different novels that had 3 storytellers. One that just resonates a lot with me is Alan Gratz' Refugee. My kids at school, we read that every year at the beginning of the year. It's an incredible book. It's great. And it does have 3 different characters, 3 different time periods, 3 different countries. So I thought about that. Could I use that? As a writer, I've been, I've always known that you look to other writers to help you become a writer. The best writers are the ones who are reading, because you're getting ideas, you're forming your own voice, but you're still grasping those ideas. So I said, can I do that? I wonder if I can do that with 3 different young people telling their story about how they feel about their fathers or their lack of fathers. And then have 3 different situations of fatherlessness. Again, one never wanted to know, one's in prison, one's there, but not there. And I thought that if you polled America and then maybe even the world, you're going to know one kid who's in that situation some kind of way. So that's why I decided, and I stuck with it, wrote that second draft, and my editor is like, yes, this is going to work.
Yeah. Let's pause for a moment. We'll be right back. Would you like to earn more from your audiobook sales? If you're an author with an audiobook, you may have noticed that royalties from Audible especially, and other platforms as well, are frankly kinda pathetically low, disappointingly low, and unfairly low considering what it cost you in effort and resources to create it. How is it the retailers are the ones making all the money off your work and investment? As someone who started in the audiobook industry in 1981, I've found it frustrating that authors keep getting shortchanged. The good news is that Pro Audio Voices just launched Amplify Audiobooks, a direct sale audiobook platform for authors that puts you back in the driver's seat. Earn 65% of the gross sales price that you set. Compare that to the percentage of the percentage that retailers give. Run promotions on schedule whenever you want. Create coupon codes. Build community with your customers, since you'll know who they are and how to contact them. Work with a caring, responsive, supportive team to help you succeed all along the way. Get help with marketing. Get paid weekly. We're helping audiobook authors who are frustrated by painfully low royalties and the barriers that prevent them from managing their own products and customers. Amplify Audiobooks is a direct sale platform that enables authors to earn much higher royalties and have way more control. We're disrupting the audiobook industry by putting authors first. Get started today at proaudiovoices.app or go to proaudiovoices.com and click on the Distribution Amplify link. Join the movement. So as we stepped into the audiobook process, you chose 3 actors, one for each of those points of view, Torian Brackett, Kim Bonney, and Ben Hawk, to narrate. Can you, and I know that we're in the production process even as we're having this interview right now, so can you tell me anything so far about the process that has stood out to you, or maybe why you chose those particular narrators, what stood out to you in their auditions?
Yeah, so, I thought it was a great process. Obviously, I've never gone through this before, so I had no idea how this works. But to receive the many different actors who lent their voices to parts of the book, and to hear it was just surreal. It's something that I've always dreamed of and never thought it would happen. But to hear my scenes played out by some, I've done it. I've recorded my voice. I even recorded a couple of teachers at school for my first 3 chapters, and we've played it to our kids. And it's like, this is good, but this is great. I can't wait to the final production, obviously. And, but just to hear that and hear the different ways that they use their voice to try to show the characterization of my 3 main characters it just came alive. And it was tough picking one person. I went back and listened to them again. I was like, oh, maybe I should have chose so-and-so, because there were just so many that were just so good, and just, if I can mesh this person with this person and this. But it was a process that I enjoyed. And like I say, I listened to them a few times after even making my final selections, because just to hear those different tones and different expressions, and it was awesome. I'm already looking forward to doing this again. We're not even quite finished with this one. So, yeah.
Well, let our listeners know, first of all, I'll say that the audiobook, My Invisible Father, will be available on Amplify Audiobooks as well as other audiobook platforms. If you get it from Amplify Audiobooks, that will be best for Jer and his work and supporting his work. Where should listeners go to learn more about your work and what you're doing?
I have a website. My website is called Jair, Jaer Media Group, Jair Media Group. You can search it out and you'll see some of the things that I've done, some of the interviews, podcasts, newspaper clippings since I released the book in 2021. I have a music video there as well. I've actually released an EP, a 6-song EP that you can listen to, that basically they're original songs, and they're songs about my characters and about the scenes, and you get a glimpse of the situation they're in through those songs. So you can find that music. We did 3 music videos, and I think I have 1 of them on my website. I have all of them on my YouTube page, which you can get from my website. You can download and stream the EP and the songs, and I have links on there as well. So I have a blog page in my bio. I did the music basically for what we talked about earlier, is just appealing to those struggling readers, so they can see and hear about these characters as they're reading, or before they're reading, or even after they've read. I wanted them to see the struggles that the characters are going through. You hear that through the music, you hear that through the lyrics. So to me, that was important, because I used to be in music as a manager, as a producer, as a rapper. So I thought I was done with music, like back in 2003, 2004. I just said, I'm done. But it came to my mind as I was going through the process of writing this book. I would love to just go to high schools and middle schools to talk about my book, but on the way out there, just have this music blasting, because we're talking about kids, right? I mean, what's going to get their attention more than beats and lyrics and dancers, to kind of support, hey, this is a good book. This is exciting. This is what we're bringing to you. And I've shown my kids over the last couple of years, my middle school students, the video, and they just love it, and I think it's goofy because I'm 53 years old, but They think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you can find all those things on my website.
That's great. It's a real indication that you know your audience, and I really commend you for that. That's sometimes one of the biggest challenges that authors face is trying to figure out, really get a clearer idea of who their audience is. And yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. This has been a real delight, and we'll look forward to My Invisible Father by Jer Armstead Jones, narrated by Torian Brackett, Kim Bonney, and Ben Houck, is now available on amplifyaudiobooks.com. Thanks for being with me, Jer.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Becky.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.